Dit is Argezoog Radio.
Welcome to the Waterman Files. This is Dr. John Waterman, and you're here with me on Argezoog Radio, and today is, let's see, what is today? Yeah, December 21st, and
it's the end of the world.
Yeah, that's right, it's the end of the world. Okay, folks, welcome to the broadcast. We're deep inside this castle. Some of us that were going to be guests today are stuck on the roads in the North American continent in the north, on a road, texting me saying they're stuck in a blizzard. So, Eli, which was scheduled to be on, we're just going to be able to talk longer. How you doing, Eli?
I'm doing good. I'm kind of perplexed because the blizzard hit north of Chicago, through Iowa and into Wisconsin, and we just got a little dusting. But where she's at, she's way on the other side, it
just decided to go over the Sears Tower and do it.
Well, it's all this hot air in Chicago, right?
Well, don't they call that the lake effect? By the way,
lake effect. Right.
Yeah, that's Lake Michigan to the west or east of Chicago.
Well,
seems to cause all kinds of weird things to happen on the opposite side of the lake.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Well, folks, I know that you've been talking your guts out about 2012. We're going to talk about 2012, and we're going to talk about the Mayan calendar. And, hey, I'm going to start off with the funny stuff before we really get serious, okay? I think we ought to lighten it up, but we will be getting serious, folks. We over here in America are under attack, and we'll tell you all about that here very soon. We've been threatened by the federal government to be arrested. We're going to tell you about that, but before we get into all that, I got some questions for you, Eli.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Why did the Mayans not make another calendar?
Because it was so long they couldn't count past 2012.
They broke their chisel.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's bad. You can't. I mean, right at the end of that calendar, why did the Mayans?
Before you go to that, I saw a great cartoon about that. It's two Mayan Indians, actually two Aztec Indians, and one who just finished carving that big calendar they have, right, in a circular pattern.
Yeah.
He's showing it to the other Aztec Indian, and the Aztec Indian who's looking says, how come you didn't go any further? And he says, well, I ran out of space. I couldn't chisel anymore on this stone. And then the other Indian says, boy, that's going to freak people out one day.
Well, that goes along with why didn't they put another calendar on the other side of the one they have?
That's a good question. Yeah.
Well, I know. It's because they don't like reruns.
But they could have continued it for another 5,000 years.
Well, they ran out of subject material or something.
Right.
Got one more. Why did the Mayans disappear all at once?
Oh, gee. Well, because the ship came in?
Because their union contract for busting rocks expired.
Oh, wow, yeah.
Yeah. So there you go.
That's right.
Take those to your end.
That's actually a big mystery still as to what happened to all those. But I think around the same time, your American Plains Indians, the Navajo, which were much bigger in population in those days. I think there's a good explanation. I think it was around 300 or 400 AD, if I'm not mistaken. There was a global drop in temperature, average about 3 or 4 degrees, which caused drought virtually on global scale, including in Britain. And in Britain, the farming was down to zero because it just got too cold to farm. And a lot of Brits actually moved across the channel into mainland Europe. to continue life, right? So I think it was around the same time that all these American Indian tribes kind of died out too. It was just caused a drought. Yeah.
Very interesting topic. We might be in that next cycle. By the way, folks, if you have a Maya, I've been told now it's not Mayan, it's Maya.
Yeah.
If you have a Maya joke, put it in the chat room, let us know, and we'll give it over the air.
Yeah.
And you're going to have to type it in English because the translator on my chat room window is not working.
Right.
Okay. Well, folks, I'm going to set the stage here to kick off today. And what I want to do is talk about the fact that, of course, we've had a shooting event in Sandy Hook, Connecticut.
Right.
And this is a tragedy if it's real. And that's one of the topics we're going to talk about. And so, folks, what would this be? What kind of event is this, if likely what we're hearing is true? And what is it that we're likely hearing? What we are hearing and what might actually be going on there is going to be talked about. Now, if you aren't not aware of what's going on in America, it's reported that a lone gunman went into a school and shot a bunch of children and teachers. Now, here's the deal. There were 223 cartridges all over the school, but the gunman only had handguns. Now, 223 cartridges, folks, are rifle cartridges for the Mossad and the American military.
Okay.
So, why do we have the wrong cartridge for the wrong kind of gun? And we have too many consistencies in this entire affair, which leads us like breadcrumbs back to the likely suspects. So, folks, that's what's going on here in America, but it's much like 911. What happened after 911 politically for us, Eli?
Right. Well, a false flag. However, I think in this case, I think it was Mr. Mike Harris who was on an internet talk show, and the show got cut off in midstream because he was talking about the Israelis being responsible. He pointed out that the Anders Breivik scenario a couple years ago in Norway occurred right after Norway recognized the Palestinian people, in contradiction to the wishes of global Zionism, right, and the Israeli state. And it turned out the initial reports on Anders Breivik were that he was a right-wing fanatic, kind of like the story of Lee Harvey Oswald was supposedly a right-wing fanatic, lone nut assassin. And then it turned out that Anders Breivik, he was really anti-Muslim and pro-Israel. So he was probably what we would call a Manchurian candidate, and probably certainly not the lone assassin, because 77 people died. How does one guy kill 77 people? He
has to be a better shooter than Doc Holliday.
Right. And so bring it up to date to this Adam Lanza. I forgot his first name.
Lanza. Yeah.
He was he's reportedly autistic, and we know that autistic children and adults have very poor motor skills. Their minds are in good shape, but what autism does is it disconnects the brain from their speech motor mechanisms and their hands and arms and legs, etc. So typically autistic people, especially one who is on Fanapt, which is another SSRI, okay, a antidepressant drug. So if somebody's on, an autistic person on Fanapt is not going to have the best motor skills to be switching cartridges and going into a school and executing people like a trained professional assassin.
Well,
Okay.
that's one scenario possible. Let's go back to your very first topic with Mike Harris, and the radio. Mike Harris is on the Rents radio network, Jeff Rents, but he was being interviewed on Press TV.
Yes.
And in Press TV, he was talking about the fingerprint and where the trail of breadcrumbs go to, all the way back to Randy Weaver, Waco, Oklahoma City bombing, 9/11, and all these other events, and the fact that, like you say, the Oslo shooting,
Right.
was a backlash, and this is a backlash on America not cooperating with the wishes of the Zionist agenda. So what happened was he verbalized that in about a 7.5 minute dialogue, which I have up on my website at the Waterman Files, by the way. Don't be surprised if that disappears, but it's there at the Waterman Files. Yeah. And that was, while he was talking, he didn't know that Press TV got notice from the owners of the satellite company, which are Israeli owned.
Yes.
That today is the last day for Press TV to be on the air, period.
Wow. Well, that's interesting because I was watching a replay of that, and I saw where the broadcast got cut off. Mr. Harris got cut off in mid-sentence, but I was not aware that Press TV was itself cut off. I thought it was just the show that was cut off. But now
well, it may have been it may have been the show, but today they're taking, it's either today they were cut off or at the end of the day this is their last day. But Press TV is going to be gone. They're taking them down.
Well, you don't criticize Israel without penalty, right?
That's true. That's true.
Okay.
Yeah, and Eli, you thought your Kill the Bank and Anglo-Saxon Israel was the only target, right?
Right. Yeah, people should know. Let me give my websites out. www.anglo-saxonisrael.com. I'll repeat that slower because people tell me I always say that too fast. www.anglo-saxonisrael.com. And that website was actually taken down by the ADL last July, and I've had to work very hard to get it back up on a different server. And then my other website is www.killthebank.net. Killthebank.net. Okay.
Oh, that'll get you in trouble.
Oh, yeah. Well, the bankers hate me. Okay. But the world is finally figuring out that these Zionist banksters are public enemy number one globally. Not just here in America, but globally. Right. And it's called Mystery Babylon in the Bible. These are public enemy number one.
They're causing a lot of problems. It's because they have their fingers in so many tills. And what was going on, was Mike was talking about the fingers and who it was that had their, what were all the places they were located and involved in. Worldwide and in the United States.
Yeah.
And, it ended up taking them down. I want to back up also and mention that an interview that Mike was having with a fellow up in, I think he's in Michigan, JB, I can't remember I think you'd know who he is, Eli. JB. Anyway, he had a guest on, and then Gordon Duff came on, and they began to, before they knew, this was after Mike was on Press TV, they began to talk about the problem. Now, and among the many topics that we're going to cover today, one of them I want us to throw out, Eli, is the fact that CNN said that this guy that supposedly did the shootings didn't exist in any kind of documents before 3 years ago. They can't find anything about him, anything about his mother, etc. And Veterans Today, which does some pretty deep digging, has a video up about that guy who was a parent. Remember that?
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So why don't you tell them about that?
Well, I think I know why, because Nancy Lanza, she's been reported as one of these survivalist nuts.
Oh, preppers. Preppers,
right.
Yeah.
Right, okay. And she was homeschooling her son.
Oh,
Adam
boy.
Lanza. Okay. Now,
it's also,
but it's odd for you. Most homeschoolers don't allow their children to take these antidepressant drugs. So I think
they're not.
There's more to the story than that. That just may be a cover story, may or may not be true, but the two of them pretty much just dropped off the face of the earth for the last 3 years, and it's quite possible that Adam Lanza was, being taken to, let's call it MK Ultra, where they prep people.
Yeah, well, they said he didn't exist before the 3 years ago.
Right.
They're trying to find schoolmates or anybody, that knows these.
He wasn't out and about. He was.
It's as if he landed. They say it's as if the guy showed up in a spaceship or something, and know.
Yeah.
Okay, folks, what has happened is obviously a tragic. If it's true, in America, we're still under so much media control. Unless we go there ourselves, in fact, I'd think they'd probably like Waco. They'd have it roped off for a long ways. You wouldn't be able to go in and look for yourself. But guess what happened? This is something that probably will get Gordon Duff in trouble.
Okay.
The Russian intelligence agency contacted Veterans Today. And they said, well, in that area is a nuclear submarine base that we keep our eye on.
Uh-huh.
And we have a satellite that looks down at that. And we saw 3 people at the school in our satellite.
Yeah. Well, I've been reporting at least 2 shooters. So, okay. You there, Doc? Okay. I've been reporting at least 2 shooters on my blog that I've been putting out, and it seems like we lost Doc, and I'll go ahead and talk about this on my own until we get Doc back. Maybe Arguso can let me know if I'm still broadcasting, if you would be so kind, Hans, to let me know if I'm still broadcasting or whether we're completely down. But just yesterday, I put out to my newsletter list an article which I wrote entitled "America Has Become a Dopeocracy." And of course, for Europeans, this might be slang. We refer to drugs as dope, D-O-P-E, dope. So, and our country has been taken over not just by illegal drugs, but by legal drugs as well. In fact, legal drugs are as much of a problem as illegal drugs. And in fact, they're even a bigger problem. And I have a phone call coming in. No, that's not Doc. So, I'm just gonna continue this discussion here. And this is what I have to say.
What? Hey, wait a minute.
Yeah.
For about 60 seconds, we've been off the air, Eli.
Yeah, I was wondering if I was broadcasting on my own or not.
Yeah, you were talking to yourself. Start all over. We were talking But let's just try to, this is going to probably be the case with anybody talking about this today. By the way, folks, guess what the American government told Americans yesterday? If you even question our official report on this shooting, we're going to arrest you.
Right.
Okay. Go ahead and back up there. We were talking about something that we, went into dead here. Go ahead.
Well, I put out an article yesterday called America Has Become a Dopocracy. And for European listeners who don't know American slang, we refer to both legal and illegal drugs as dope. Okay?
Yeah.
So a drug dealer we call a dope dealer. Okay?
Psychotic.
Stuff. Right. Yeah, and but dope is typically an expression used for addictive drugs, okay, legal and illegal, okay? So, and it's quite obvious to me, and just to comment on what you were saying before we got taken down for the 60 seconds, I've been reporting that there were at least 2 shooters. Yeah. Because eyewitnesses at the scene reported a second shooter who was tracked down in the woods. He was handcuffed, brought out of the woods, and put into a police vehicle in the front seat of the vehicle, which is very unusual because typically, prisoners are put in the back seat of any kind of squad car.
Okay? Oh, especially in this kind of a case.
Oh, yeah, right. So the fact that he was put in the front seat suggests he was probably an operative known to the whoever was running that vehicle. Okay, and as you mentioned, the expended shells do not match the weapons reportedly used by Adam Lanza. Okay, now my feeling is that Mr. Lanza was not even there. If he was there, he was just used as a decoy, and other people did the shooting. Okay, that's my personal opinion. Okay, because everything points to that fact. As I said earlier, there's no way an autistic kid on FANAPT can possibly, systematically execute all those people.
He's no gunslinger.
Right, he's no gunslinger.
And the way that these people were shot, you'd have to have been a very, very accurate. Right. Besides, he didn't even use the same kind of weapon bullet that was found, the cartridges all over the place, right? I mean, so what is this? And if you're going to go kill yourself, why would you even cover your face?
Right. Yeah. That's so nobody's going to know who you are, right?
It's so the operatives don't get. Sense. Now, let me back up and make a mention that wasn't made on Gordon's show with Mike Harris. Okay. By the way, that's up there. Okay. The transmission that got the Press TV taken down is in a YouTube video on my website, thewatermanfiles.com. Okay.
All right.
But here's what happened. Gordon said before something happened that I'm aware of, that Israeli Mossad agents had gone active in America recruiting ex-military and militia. The day of elections for the president in America, there was a Mossad agent that contacted a militia commander.
Okay.
That ended up calling me and telling me and describing the person that came and talked to him. And I'm going to describe these people. They met in person. There were 2 of them. They claimed to be a second tour veteran of the Afghanistan war.
Okay.
And yet they were in their mid-20s.
Oh, wow.
They were dark-haired, dark-skinned, had a goatee, and were out, and here's what they said. We would like to hire you for $75,000 to do something at an undisclosed location at an undisclosed time.
Right.
And so I think what we've got is a very active operation going on, which Mike Harris
exposed
along with Gordon. Right. And then there was some discussion about it, and there was some very hard language used by Harris's other guest. And I saw that name. I keep forgetting that guy's name. Okay. That was, that was on there. JB, I'm still looking for it in the Campbell.
Okay. Campbell? Okay.
I thought maybe his name, he's called Don Campbell, but I might be wrong.
Right. I know a person by that name, but it's not the same person. No.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Well, here's the issue that Campbell was mentioning. He said that we're going to have to, in America, do exactly what they're pushing and expecting us to do. And so, Eli, give me your thoughts. Why would an event be staged like this? What's the purpose? What's your opinion?
Well, several of these mass shootings have been staged recently. And let me answer the question directly, and then I'll give the evidence for why I believe this, okay? There's simply
you were cut out for a second. Start all over.
Yeah, right. Okay. Yeah, my opinion is that the New World Order, the Illuminati, the Rothschilds are behind all of this, and they have staged numerous mass killings using Manchurian candidates, and the Jared Lee Loughner affair in Arizona, the Aurora, Colorado affair with James, I forget what his name was, the shooter there, and even the Lanza case, and many, many others. Virtually every single one of these so-called assassins has been on drugs of one sort or another. They've also had mysterious disappearing acts happen, and we know that they've probably been whisked off to some kind of MK Ultra school for Manchurian candidates where they're brainwashed, hypnotized, and otherwise drugged, so that they can be used in psyops, okay? That is psychological operations. And a psychological operation is what the Mossad, the CIA, MIA, all these secret societies, or these, so-called intelligence agencies, but they're not intelligence agencies. They're disruptive agencies. They're used to create incidents to be blamed on others. Okay? That's what they do, and that's what a psyop is. It's an incident created to be blamed on someone else. And that's what this incident in Connecticut is. It's a psyop. Okay?
Now and we're giving it a lot of leeway, because that's if he really was there.
Yeah, if he was there. Yeah, like as I mentioned earlier, if he was there at all,
and that's a good chance, right? That's a pretty good chance of being true.
He was covered from head to toe. As you said, he had a mask, and if he was intending on committing suicide, why bother with the mask, right?
Sure. Or a bulletproof vest.
Right? So there's so many inconsistencies in this story, and as in the Aurora, Colorado case, as in the Columbine case, which was earlier in Colorado, I think.
Or even the Norway case.
Yes, exactly.
Same finger. It's all the same fingerprint. It looks like, isn't it?
Yeah, right. It's redundant. Okay, the modus operandi is becoming so familiar to us that very few people are fooled anymore about what's really going on. Okay, these psyop creators are counting on the stupidity of the American people and the gullibility of people everywhere to believe that every single one of these incidents was by a lone assassin acting out on his personal vendetta against whoever, right?
Or a small group, right. And like the 911 event. And I think since 911, Eli, they can't fool us anymore, can they?
No, they can't fool us anymore. And this particular psyop was so horribly botched that, it's like when you have a serial killer. His first crime is always very carefully planned. He looks over his shoulder, makes sure there's nobody, there's no witnesses in the area, right? And then he does the dirty deed. That's the way Ted Bundy operated, the West Coast killer.
For years and years, yeah.
Yeah, right. But
he forgot to look up at the Russian satellite.
Right. But typically what happens is with a serial killer, he eventually gets careless. Okay? The more times he kills, the more careless he gets. And the last two operations, namely Aurora, Colorado, and now Newtown, Connecticut, are both very, very sloppy. The news reporting of the mass media is covering up so many details which were reported on day one, which were eliminated from coverage on day two, okay? The first day they reported his name wrong. They said it was Ryan Lanza. And then it turns out Ryan Lanza was Adam's brother, but somehow Adam Lanza had Ryan Lanza's ID in his pocket.
It just sounds like a made-up person the more you hear that kind of thing.
Yeah, it's totally, and as you mentioned, the ammunition doesn't fit the guns the handguns, because the assault rifle was still left behind in the vehicle. It was never used in the actual scene. Nevertheless, CNN, NBC, ABC, Senator Feinstein, Senator Lieberman, Senator Schumer.
Wait a minute. You mean those dual citizen?
That's right.
Elected representatives. Okay.
They went on the air calling for the elimination of assault rifles with, multiple magazines, right? And of course, that gun wasn't even used in the crime. So this is all scripted ahead of time.
So we're looking at a very similar fingerprint. Now we have Sophie in our chat room mentioning that, like Holmes' father, in the Aurora event, they were both fathers, assuming this is all real.
Yeah.
Both fathers were to testify for the LIBOR scandal.
That's right. And that's that international, committee that's, investigating bank fraud globally.
Now, let's look at the breadcrumbs. You just mentioned.
Yeah.
The breadcrumbs go back to the banks.
That's right.
What would your bet be that the central banks have hired more assassins than anybody else in the world? What's your thoughts?
Well, of course, they always have. I mean, go back to Andrew Jackson. American president he killed the bank. That's his epitaph. I killed the bank. Because he was opposing the Rothschilds, who were attempting to establish the third national bank after President Andrew Jackson killed the second national bank. And he called these banksters vipers. You vipers, I will rout you out. Okay? These same vipers then assassinated Abraham Lincoln because he issued the greenbacks in direct competition against the Rothschild paper money banknotes. Okay? The same crowd assassinated Kennedy because he issued Executive Order 11110, which created Treasury notes in direct competition to the banksters' Federal Reserve notes. Okay? The trail of assassins and assassinations leads always directly to these international bankers.
It's kind of like we had a conference call, Eli and I did earlier today. It seems like the banks are always involved in making sure that money doesn't get to free energy projects, too.
Right. That goes back to Nikola Tesla, right? And his projects were killed by the banksters as well because he advocated free energy, which was and more local energy, right? Where the big electric companies and the oil companies can't charge for their product if it's local, right? So you need to have centralized control of energy in order to be able to charge big bucks for it. And Nikola Tesla was actually opposed to that idea. And it was only Westinghouse, George Westinghouse. He was the only, let's say, industrialist who was able to back Nikola Tesla after he ran afoul of the international bankers, right? So yeah, you can't get away from this issue of total control of society from above by these banksters. You can't get away from that issue.
You can't, and it seems like the fingerprint has familiarity as always, and I kind of look at, they always pick out similar patsies. In these kind of cases where it's small, it's one person. Yeah. In bigger events, they might have a handful, or like the 19, that were supposedly involved, when now we find out there was probably huge numbers involved in 911. And right. By the way, I might mention here something that the listeners at Argosog Radio are not aware of. Many of them may not have heard this, because Gordon Duff was in a lawsuit, and it just got released from federal court, the documents.
Okay.
There was this videotape of the, quote, plane that hit the Pentagon that had been turned over to the FBI, and they wouldn't release that video for 11 years. Mm-hmm. They were forced to reveal and show that video. I have that video.
Okay.
And there is no plane.
Mm-hmm. Right.
But there is a missile.
Right.
It shows a missile hitting the Pentagon.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
Now, missiles just don't accidentally go off and start headed toward the Pentagon.
It could also have been a drone, a very small drone that looked like a missile. Yeah. Okay.
Sure.
Yeah.
Or guided cruise missiles,
sure.
Anything like that. But it's an incredible video. And so many of the not the victims, but so many of the culprits don't even exist. So many of the boogeymen, right, or the terrorists, they seem to be missing, don't they?
Yes, of course, because this is all theater. It's New World Order theater, or Orwellian theater, if you will. George Orwell predicted the day when there would be a global power that stages wars among nations, and the people of the various countries actually believe that these wars are sincere, and that the warring parties are actually, and true enemies of one another. But no, Orwell says that's not true. What's happening is that this Orwellian dictatorship, which we can call the New World Order or the global dictatorship or the United Nations under the House of Rothschild, they stage wars against these various, pitting one faction against another in order to control the masses within the respective countries. Okay? So, in other words, keeping these various countries in a state of fear of the other country, when in reality, the war is being staged by these international banksters for the purpose of people control, constant terror. It's constant terror. So the people who are saying we're engaged in a war on terror are themselves the terrorists.
Oh, that's a good point. That's really funny, because Gordon said on this, and by the way, folks, just go to the Waterman Files website, and there's about 3 or 4 posts up. One of them has the audio of Mike Harris, which has Gordon Duff interviewed there. He says, whenever you hear somebody saying anti-Semitic and or what you just said, Eli, he said, you can bet they're part of that criminal.
That's right.
Cabal. They're part of that cabal.
Absolutely.
And they're, just trying to psych off everybody, out of the, truth. And so, that's that's actually a fingerprint you can watch for. Eli, you and Mike Harris, Gordon Duff are some of the few people in America willing to talk about this 800-pound gorilla in the room.
Right.
And a lot of people don't because of the onslaught of lies and propaganda.
It's an 800-pound matzo ball.
There you go. Yeah.
Right.
But get this, I think you're going to be lucky if that's all that happens, where you get, an onslaught and a win. If you get too deep into the truth, you might end up an assassin's target.
Right.
Or threatened, like every single American, on this last shooting, every single American has been threatened by the federal government that if they dare challenge or mention in a blog or on air that the official report's not true, they'll get arrested. And so I want to talk about. I want to start quite yet, but I want to talk about where the where this is leading, what their main goal and why they're doing this. I know that there's probably many agendas that this will help, but they have one primary one, and I just got a question in the chat room. Where is the link to the video? Well, if you go to my website, the Waterman Files, if you go to the post that says the truth is just the start, you will see at the bottom of that one that there is a 7-minute there's a Mike Harris talking for 7 minutes. Now, that's not the entire video. The whole video on that interview is 24 minutes, but there were 2 other guests that took up the other time. And he went on a monologue for about 7 minutes, and it's right there on the watermanfiles.com.
In that monologue, he identifies the Mossad as being the perpetrators of the Newtown, Connecticut event. Yes.
And then if you want to, you can continue by listening to an hour-and-a-half broadcast of Mike Harris and Gordon Duff.
Right.
On that, on the post I've got, the redcoats are coming.
Right.
And Gordon Duff in that interview with Mike talks about the roots of communism.
Okay. Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about what you know about the roots of communism.
Right. Well, I have a pet phrase. It's called "Communism is Judaism for the Masses." And in my book, The Great Impersonation, I give tremendous amounts of evidence of the Jewish creation of communism by Rabbi Moses Hess and his protege Karl Marx. And Lenin and Stalin and various other Jewish creators of what is known today as communism. Rabbi Stephen Wise, the head rabbi of the United States, says some call it communism, I call it Judaism. The history of the connection between world Jewry, world Zionism, and the creation of communist revolutions has been erased from the history books. But I have dredged up their own admissions from forgotten history, proving that Bolshevism was always Jewish. In fact, I have a German white paper, which was put out by the German government during the First World War, that the Jewish names, and I think you mentioned earlier there was the Jewish assassin of the Tsar's family. Okay, so the communism has Jewry written all over it, but they have been quietly suppressing the history of their creation, financing, and continued support of all communist revolutions here in America, Europe, and everywhere actually. And it began with the French Revolution, which was, in fact, a communist revolution. It was not a democratic revolution. And that was financed by none other than Meyer Amschel Rothschild and the Jacobins, who are also, Jewish secret society members. Okay.
So we got the secret societies controlled by the Zionist agenda.
That's
the
right.
The banks by the Zionist.
That's right.
Everybody, it seems like they own the goose that lays the golden egg, and they control the people that make the guns.
Right. But
or
by secretly financing their own enemy,
okay.
they control they control the conflict, right?
Okay.
And so they brainwash people into taking sides. Okay? So you have all these liberals and ultra-radical leftists who are anti-capitalists, who are pro-communists, who have no idea that the capitalists that they hate actually created the very movement which they so strongly believe in.
And wouldn't you say, though, that if we get into the technical description of capitalism, it's the flip side of communism, and we're more of a free market society, or
right,
should
yeah.
be?
Yeah, capitalism, the strict definition of capitalism, that there's a huge difference between the American system, which is free enterprise, and capitalism per se, because the free enterprise is a system in which the government creates the money and regulates the value of the money. In other words, keeps the value of the money stable so that it can't be manipulated by banksters. Okay? Capitalism is when banksters issue the money and put it into circulation without government control. That's really
good. Yeah, that's a good way to put it. That's pretty clear.
And
well, let me ask you this. They had this revolution that started communist Bolshevik Marxism in Russia.
Yeah.
Was it because the Tsar was a ruthless dictator? Tell us about the. I don't know that much. I know that it was a Romanov family, but tell us. Do you know the history? Anything about that era?
Absolutely, yeah. In fact, it gets back to money, because the Tsars of Russia, going back to the days of Abraham Lincoln, the Lincoln administration had very close ties with the Tsars. And the Tsars were actually trying to get rid of the serf system, okay? The feudalistic system whereby the state, that is Russia, had control of the land and the farmers were simply serfs beholden to the local gentry, right? And so under the American system, that's what it was called in those days, the American system was being transferred from America to Russia by agents of Abraham Lincoln and the Republican Party. And so they were transferring in Russia from the feudalistic system to independent farms. And that process has gone and was, I would say, 60 to 75% complete. In other words, feudalism was being dissolved in Russia, and free enterprise was being installed with family farms. Okay? The Soviet Revolution put an end to that and created a new dictatorship. In other words, the Tsars were implementing freedom in Russia, but the world Zionists and the world communists were in total opposition to family farms, and that's why they took control of Russia by Sovietizing Russia and turning it into a communist dictatorship. Of course, this is not how your history books describe the situation, but that is in fact what happened. And because the Tsar in Lincoln's day was such a good friend of Lincoln, he actually sent his fleet. He sent his Pacific Fleet and his Atlantic Fleet to America during the Civil War to prevent the French, the Mexicans, and the British from intervening on behalf of the South against the North, because they were threatening to do that. This is another era, subject that is utterly, whitewashed, blackballed, whatever you erased from the history books, because the banksters don't want you to know about their involvement, their potential involvement in the Civil War. Okay? And so the banksters, the Rothschilds, had a deep hatred for the Romanovs ever since they took the side of Abraham Lincoln during the Civil War, and they swore that they would assassinate him and any of his relatives, and they eventually did that in the Bolshevik Revolution.
Now, as I understand it, the record shows that the Tsar and his wife were forced to watch their children murdered.
Right.
And then they were murdered. That's hideous stuff. That sounds like the same kind of fingerprint you're seeing at the shooting in Connecticut. Yes.
Yeah. Yes, they killed children. It's an act of terror, as we said earlier. It's the people who claim to be engaging in a war against terror who are themselves the biggest terrorists on the planet. And they foment terror. They use terror. The Israeli state was founded on terror. Terror against the Palestinian people.
You know, now a lot of people might think America was founded on terror too, but, you know, we weren't just killing children. I mean, we weren't out there murdering. Let's get back to it after this break coming up here. And we're going to get more into, folks, what they're doing this for. Why are they doing this? Now, as many of you know, not only is this end of the stick over here in the States being attacked, Mika Kot and Aaron, who, by the way, Aaron is a host on Argosog Radio right before me on Fridays, and they're both under attack. I know that Aaron mentioned to me they're trying to get 300,000 euros out of him for a fine. Okay. And this all has to do with exposing a certain group of people that are involved in pedophile rings.
Right.
And I want you to kind of connect the dot between what's going on with that and this Connecticut group and the fingerprint there, and then what the ultimate thing is that they're really trying to get. And we're going to talk again then after this break that I'm going to have Hans give us, and we'll be right back after this break. And you're listening to the Waterman Files, and it's December 21st. The day the world ends.
Right.
Yes, okay.
Well, we're hoping that the old world ends. Yes.
We'll be right back.
Amen.
Dit is Aardige Zo Radio.
Okay, I got it. Okay.
All right, we're talking here on the break, getting Eli in the chat room. You're listening to the Waterman Files, and this is Mayan calendar end date, and we absolutely know exactly what happened, that we don't have a new calendar, and that's because they broke the chisel.
Yeah, right.
So,
and there wasn't enough room on the circular calendar.
No, they ran out of room. They were absolutely.
Well, here, Doc, are we back on the air?
Yes.
Yeah. Let me just address the question you raised before the break, and that is, what is the reason why the international cabal of the New World Order and the banksters and the Mossad are doing this? Why are they doing this?
Sure.
Well, first of all, America has what's called the Second Amendment. And the Second Amendment is the right of all law-abiding American citizens to keep and bear arms. Now, Thomas Jefferson and the Founding Fathers all believed in the right to carry arms, not just for self-defense. If someone comes to your house and tries to rob you, rape you, or murder you, you can blow his brains out with your gun, okay, and not be prosecuted, okay? But in addition, our Founding Fathers said that when the government becomes so oppressive that they want to take away your rights, you can use your guns to kill them too, okay? And in no uncertain language, our Founding Fathers said, even Abraham Lincoln said, if the government becomes so oppressive that the people must take arms against the government and create a new government, the citizens of America have the right to do that. So our right to keep and bear arms is not just for intruders, but for tyrants. And
now, there's a lot of people, Eli, that thinks differently about this weapon thing, and they think that education, open and free society of information will stop it.
No.
And I have a question. Do bullies pay attention to that kind of thing? I mean, what does the bully on the playground pay attention to? The teacher saying, "Don't do that, Billy," or what's he worried about?
Yeah, he doesn't pay attention to that. It's the same principle as people putting up signs. This is a nuclear-free zone, right? Anybody dropping an atom bomb, probably out of spite, will target one of those signs, right? But it's absurd. It's absurd. People have the right to defend themselves against tyrants. And that's the bottom line. That's what the Second Amendment is really about. That, in fact, there was a great cartoon recently where it's actually a bumper sticker. You see it fairly often, where you see Stalin with his right arm raised, and Churchill with his right arm raised, and Hitler with his right arm raised, and a few other well-known tyrants, okay? And then the caption is, if you believe in gun control, raise your right hand, right? Okay? Well, that's what we've got.
Yeah,
all right? Yeah. It's the tyrants who want to disarm the law-abiding citizens. And so these people are staging these events, blaming it on guns, when it's really the terrorists themselves whose rotten agenda is to deprive our people of the right to defend themselves against the terrorists, okay? So it's the terrorists staging these events, and in fact, I did a show about this last Sunday, and when I got done with the show, I turned on my television set to see what the mainstream kosher press is saying about all this, and immediately I saw Dianne Feinstein, senator from California, Chuck Schumer, and Joseph Lieberman, both from the East Coast, the three top Zionists,
They're all dual. By the way, they're all dual citizens.
They're all Israeli citizens. Yes, they're Jews who put the Israeli state before America, and all three of these people were calling for the suspension of the right to keep and bear arms. Now, they're not going to say it exactly that way. They're not going to come out and say, we don't want the Second Amendment. But they're chipping away.
Well, they've been debating the Second Amendment and its meaning, trying to sidestep the actual original definition. And here's what I've got to ask. Why are they so concerned about the guns?
Well, because America stands in the way of the New World Order. Okay, the New World Order is dictatorship by global governance, which simply means governance by banksters. Okay, so the United Nations was created by the Rothschild banking family for the express purpose of controlling the member nations. Okay, and the United Nations is in reality a gigantic bank. You've got the World Bank, the Bank of International Settlements, the International Monetary Fund. All of these institutions are part of the United Nations organization, right? And it has never been anything other than a corporate dictatorship with creating a facade of national representation. It's no such thing, okay?
Well, that's exactly right. This other fellow that was on there, not Gordon Duff. Why do I really have a Don
Campbell?
Campbell. Okay, no, but it's not Don Campbell. Okay, it's Campbell.
Right.
This other guest mentioned something, and I want to have you comment on it. He said that these people have learned this warfare from the Old Testament, and they've learned to slaughter children, which was written in the Old Testament, and that's what the Jews use as their map. Now, is that true, or do they use something else?
Well, it's true that the Jews use that, because they falsely claim to be the Israelites of the Old Testament, okay? But the biblical prescription, not proscription, prescription, the command by Yahweh for the Israelites to go into Canaan land and slaughter those 10 particular tribes. That was because Yahweh understood, and the Israelites were made to understand by Yahweh that these people that were in that land, these Canaanites, the Perizzites, the Jebusites, the Hittites, etc., that these particular tribes possessed the DNA of the fallen angels and were an utterly corrupt race that had no potential to do any good because they're really literally children of Lucifer.
So we're really not talking about humans.
No. Well,
so this brings us to a big jump for a lot of listeners. There's going to be a lot of people having trouble going, wait a minute. We were talking about religion, and I think that the Bible has this vicious God that goes out and has people slaughtered.
Right.
But really, it's not people, is what you're saying.
It's hybrid offspring. Right.
So we're not talking about people.
No.
And why would he even allow those beings to be slaughtered? Why would he have them killed? I mean, they're there on the planet. I mean, a lot of people would say, well, Adam got put here on the planet from somewhere else, so why can't they be there?
Well,
what's the difference?
They violated the law by, as the Apostle Peter says, they left their first estate, which means they were intended to be exclusively non-material angelic beings who were
in another dimension, a whole dimension.
Absolutely. And they were supposed to remain there. They were never intended to incarnate. They did this in violation of Yahweh's commands.
So we had a rule book telling them, you stay in your sandbox.
Right.
The Adam and his group and some of the pre-Adamic races, they'll stay in their sandbox.
That's right.
And the two were never supposed to meet.
Right. So when these fallen angels, which are referred to as Nephilim in the Old Testament, Ben Elohim, meaning the sons of God, but these are bad sons of God. These are the rebellious fallen angels, which are.
So we're talking about draconian. Dragon, we could call, a lot of people have gotten pretty close to it in the New Age movement, Eli. I think they call them Dracos or something. Now, I know there's been discussion of Dracos being kind of smart, good, and a ruling class of people. Now, angels that are fallen, they're not stupid. They may not be very wise, but they're not stupid.
But they're very intelligent. Yes.
Yeah.
And typically what's noticed about serial killers is they are very intelligent, but they're also very evil.
Oh boy.
See, the liberal mindset presumes that if you're intelligent, you give up evil. That's not the case.
It's like you get to be a bad guy and all of a sudden you're stupid.
Right. Exactly.
That's not a very good, that's a really bad, that's extrapolation is really poor, Exactly. It's like saying, well, Jacob Sverdlov, the first president of the Soviet Union who butchered the family of the Tsar, was a real stupid idiot and he was on drugs and he was autistic and blah, 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 when that's not the case.
No. And, the perception that, there's this really false idea put out there by academia, when academia is controlled by these very beings, that states that, the world's problems will be solved by education. If we all go to college and learn their way of doing things, that this will be a peaceful society. Well, the exact opposite is true. The educational establishment is creating a race of zombies, violent, drug-addicted zombies.
Now, but let me back up and say this. What would our educational communities be like if these creatures had not left their first estate?
Well, in America, we would still have classical education. It was in the 1960s that these Nephilim took over our educational establishment, and started teaching liberalism, started teaching homosexuality and feminism and anything goes morality, It all changed in the 1960s when the Nephilim took over American education, And the 1960s were a watershed time. They did this under the cover of the Vietnam War. While the Vietnam War was going on, they infiltrated our universities, our churches, the television stations, et cetera, Everything became more liberalized, free, drug-addicted, et cetera. You name it. Every vice under the sun crept in during the 1960s thanks to these Zionist Nephilim.
Right. I can see that.
Yeah. Okay.
I can see that. In fact, I know, having been a professor, that scores for entrance into college today have just
dropped,
almost dramatically, constantly dropped, decade after decade, year after year. Right. They just kept going. Of course, we have the exception to the rule in every generation. There are brilliant students. In fact, I remember I was teaching anatomy, Eli, one time, and there was a student on my front row that brought in his book, and the next day he was in without his book, and I'm teaching anatomy to the pre-med students. He didn't have his anatomy book, but he had the Iliad and the Odyssey, and he was reading the Iliad and Odyssey while I'm lecturing, and I thought, well, if he wants to flunk, that's his business. As long as he doesn't disrupt the class, he's not going to stay in here very long,
Okay.
Well, every time I ask a question, he could answer it. So he actually is one of those exceptions. He memorized, he went home, read the book, and he had a photographic memory. But that's not everybody.
Right.
The mean on that curve, the bell curve, has dramatically, continuously dropped. It's been bad.
Right. Yeah. Well, they're deliberately dumbing us down so that we can't figure out that the terrorists are in charge, right? They're constantly telling us, look out for terrorists, but your professor is a terrorist. The college president is a terrorist. The president is a terrorist. The banker is a terrorist. All these people in pinstripe suits, they're really reptilians, to use David Icke's expression, right? They're really reptilians pretending to be like us when they're not us at all. There's somebody in the chat room asked a question. Why do Nephilim believe they can kill whoever they want? It's because they're descendants of Lucifer.
Their arrogance, isn't it?
Yeah, they're descendants of Cain, the first murderer, which the Bible clearly says Cain was the first murderer. And he has literal descendants here on the planet.
And so it's a genetic predisposition
absolutely,
that causes them to behave like devils. And I guess that's where we got the saying, you don't drop far from your tree.
Right.
The apple doesn't, it doesn't fall.
Tree, right? There is a Nephilim tree, and that's the evil tree in the book of Genesis.
It's really
evil tree that Adam and Eve were forbidden to touch.
Yeah, the tree happened to have two legs and
that's right. Right. But it was wearing a mask, right? They had a mask like a
this time and his name probably wasn't Adam Lanza.
No. It was Jacob Rothschild. That's what.
So here's what Campbell. I remembered his name. Here's what Campbell said. He said, an attempt to take away the Second Amendment right, which, by the way, is our right in America to possess and own a weapon.
Right.
Primarily a gun, a rifle or a handgun, either one, or a shotgun. That right, if it's ever attacked, is definitely treasonous. And there's only one reason, he said, they would do that. What do you think they would do that for? What's their plan if they're doing that? Why would they do that?
Well, they know that the American citizen is the last bastion against the real terrorists. Okay.
So how would taking their guns away?
They could send shock troops in and just take over. Okay. The only thing that has prevented these people from taking over America is the Second Amendment. See, look at what happened in Australia when they took the Australians' guns away. Crime went up tremendously.
Yeah, it went up 40%.
The same thing happened in Britain. Wherever they managed to take people's guns away, crime increases, and that's the objective, is to create more chaos within the society, because a chaotic society is more easily controlled and manipulated by the terrorists themselves. Okay? So we're talking about Nephilim terrorism, okay, being fomented, and the only thing standing in the way of their complete takeover of America has been the Second Amendment. That's why people like Schumer and Feinstein and Lieberman and their co-religionists and kinspeople, Nephilim all, have been trying to undermine the Second Amendment. Of course, they've been attacking the U.S. Constitution, all of it, not just the Second Amendment, but all of it, in the last 100 years, intensively. So,
in our document, the Constitution, I might add, for those in Europe that are in also a similar research and understand what I'm about ready to say, is really about common law, the man on the land. Right. Not being an admiralty and not having laws that were written by Nephilim lawyers.
Right, exactly.
But basically laws that are just basically treat somebody else like you want to be treated. But see, when I think you're right, Eli, if Nephilim don't have any internal conscience,
they don't. Yes, they do not.
You're certainly not going to get good social behavior, are you?
Right. No. Well, it's simply a fact that whatever country, city, state, nation that the Jews have, instituted their dictatorship, absolute chaos and terror have either been part of the attempt to take over their country, or that country has resulted in that after a number of years, okay? And this is why the Jews have been evicted from country after country after country throughout history, and they're getting ready to be evicted from America very shortly as well, because they have just gone too far yet again, Okay.
Yeah.
The American people are waking up to who these people are, why they're doing this, and, as we're talking about, Mr. Harris talked about the Mossad being behind this terrorist event, okay? The Mossad, their motto is, by deception, make war.
Well, he also mentioned in an earlier, radio broadcast, Duff did, a Sephardic head rabbi in Israel by the name of Ovadia Yosef or something like that.
Okay.
Who mentioned that anybody that's not Jewish, particularly a girl, is not even as valuable
human.
as a dog. They're not even as valuable as a dog.
Right.
And they must be, and it would not be murder to kill like a German or a British girl or any other thing besides
a non-Jewish person. Yeah.
And this is the head rabbi of a religion in Israel. Now, Eli,
and in every synagogue on the planet, that is the religion they practice.
Eli, help us, because a lot of people think that this religion he's talking about is linked arm in arm with Christianity.
No, it's
so
not
tell us what
the Bible. No, absolutely
so
not.
Tell us, separate that for us. What's he doing? How come it's so different than what I think the Bible is? And can you help us separate? No, that's not what the history of the Israelites were.
Well,
help us out a little bit.
Yeah, first of all, in the Old Testament, there was no such thing as a rabbi. There was no such thing as a Jew. You have to understand that the Old Testament was written by Israelites, and some of those Israelites were members of the tribe of Judah. And a Judahite is not the same thing as a Jew. The Jews define themselves in this way, in fact, in the Israeli state. The only way you can be considered a Jew is if your mother is Jewish or if you convert to Judaism, okay? In the Old Testament, your father had to be a Judahite, that is a direct descendant of the patriarch Judah, and your mother had to be of the Adamic race to consider the offspring to be of Judah. So, the definition for Jews is the complete opposite of what the biblical definition is, all right? And the rabbis.
So where do they get all this opposition to what we really read in the Old? I mean, where do they get this info? I mean, how do they get this?
Made it up. Judaism is a contrived, fictitious religion. It was begun by the Pharisees in the days of Christ, and the Jewish Encyclopedia admits that Judaism is the religion of the Pharisees, not the religion of the Levitical priesthood, of the Old Testament. And there was no such thing as a money changer in the temple until these Edomite Pharisees on the scene, okay? So,
which are Nephilim, right? They're Nephilim.
Absolutely. Josephus tells us that Herod imported the high priest from Babylon.
Oh, that's wonderful.
No way that the Israelites would have imported a priest from Babylon. He would have been of the wrong race. He would have been the wrong religion. But Herod, who was not a Judahite, he was an Edomite of these Pharisee Sephardic Jews that you just mentioned. This rabbi.
He's the supreme Sephardic rabbi of Israel.
Right.
And let me ask you this. He was also one that I saw, another deal he wrote, this was in referral to an article Duff was writing, that the less religious Jewish youth of Israel have been protesting and telling the Israel government, you better stop what you're doing or you're going to get us all killed. In the world, what's going on? I mean,
this is a recurring theme within the Jewish community, because typically what happens is that the rabbis lose control of the youth because the youth find that Judaism is such an obnoxious religion that they can't stand it anymore, and they don't want to be Jews, right? They prefer to be whatever, in France, the Jewish youth, after 3 or 4 generations, the Jewish youth identifies more with the culture that they grow up in, as opposed to Judaism, okay? That happened in Germany. It happened in Britain. It happens wherever Jews are located. After so many generations, the children rebel against the religion of their parents, right? Because they realize what a horrible and awful religion it is, and that they themselves are going to bear the brunt of the reaction that has been precipitated by their elders.
It just amazes me that people like Bernanke, Rothschild, Netanyahu,
right,
and who's his defense guy? Greenspan, Alan Greenspan. It just blows me away why they even want to pursue what they do, because anything that isn't balanced and is a win-win situation forever, it doesn't last, don't they? I mean, they're smart. How come they can't figure this out? Or do they see this as something that nobody's smart enough to figure out, and they're arrogant? It seems like.
Let me go back to the situation where the Jews have been kicked out of every European nation in historical times, okay? And that is because what they do is whenever the Jews enter a country, it's usually led by their bankster class. And their bankster class. Oh, really?
Is that right?
Yeah.
So it's an economic mechanism. Okay.
The banksters entered the country as courtiers or as advisors to presidents or advisors to kings, et cetera, okay?
With a big money bag.
So their money talks, and after they become trusted advisors to the top politicians of that country, then they begin to agitate for the entrance of the lesser brethren, as the big Jews, as the Oberjuden, refer to the little Jews. They refer to their own people as the lesser brethren, okay?
Really?
So, yes, and what they do after the lesser brethren become a large population group, then they use them to vote for Jewish promoted agendas, right? Such as opposition to the Second Amendment.
Oh.
Okay.
Well, they don't still have enough to vote that out without rigging the ballots. That's for sure.
And it's not going to happen in America. I guarantee it's not going to. I'm personally guaranteeing it's not going to happen in America.
Well, Eli, let me ask you this: even if they pass something on paper that says we've got to turn in our guns, what do you suppose will happen even if they pass a law?
Well, the Second American Revolution is going to start. If they even dare to even suggest that the Second Amendment should be repealed, there's going to be a revolution.
Guess what those three people you mentioned are doing right now on the holiday break. Guess what kind of bill is going through its paces?
Oh yeah, they're going to start a revolution. Because there's no way we're going to give up our guns. Because this is guns. America was founded by guns, right? By eliminating the tyrants, the very tyrants, the Rothschild bankers, during the first American Revolution. We haven't forgotten that. We know who our enemy is.
So you're really not saying we like violence. You're just saying that we know what taking our guns away means. It means you're going to turn us into slaves, even worse than we are now. And so you're saying that this, among our other grievances, now I'd like to go back to the original founding fathers. Eli, we had a lot of grievances in the founding of this country that weren't being taken care of. And then when they came after the guns, it was kind of like the straw that broke the camel's back. And I don't think Europeans understand that when they came after our guns in the first American Revolution with George and Jefferson and all them, that's when they finally said to arms, we're not going to do this.
Yeah.
I mean, they were already complaining about many grievances that they weren't allowed to, they weren't represented. Today in America, we're not represented by the ballot box.
No, we're not.
And they talked about the justice system being oppressive, and today that's the same. We have a corrupt judiciary.
Right.
So as we go down the list and we find all the very similar grievances that was 230 years ago with our founding fathers. What sparked the American Revolution was the day they came after the guns and were headed for the armory, and that's when they yelled, "The redcoats are coming."
Right.
And so they said they were coming. Now, what did that mean? Folks, that meant, and to help the Europeans, that meant they were coming after the guns because they were going to go possibly kill colonists, Americans, put them in shackles, and oppress them.
Right.
And so what I think you're saying, Eli, is not that we want to take guns and go kill a bunch of Nephilim or people or whoever. It's a symbol that we know they're trying to oppress us.
Right. Well, because the Bolshevik Revolution succeeded in Russia precisely because the people were unarmed. They know that.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
Oh, yeah, they were totally unarmed. And in fact, Stalin said that one person with a gun can control 100 people without guns.
Wow.
And he was absolutely right, because people lived in sheer terror of a knock on the door in the middle of the night by somebody carrying a gun. Right? Had they themselves had guns, they wouldn't have been in terror.
Well, let me ask you this. What do you think the likelihood is of them trying to come after guns? Well,
they have to. They have no choice, because the situation is this: the global economy, thanks to their fiat money, Great Pyramid scheme, is collapsing. And they have to defeat the Second Amendment before the global economy collapses, because if they don't, they won't be able to pay the shock troops to disarm us. Okay?
Well, defeating the Second Amendment, it's going to have to be more than on paper, because I don't think I think Americans are just going to laugh if they have a notice in the mail saying, "Oh, by the way, we see that you have here 2 rifles. Please go down to your police station." They're just going to laugh, aren't they?
They're going to laugh. Yeah, there's no Americans that are going to turn in their guns. We have a saying here: if you want to try to take my gun away, I'll send you a message from Smith and Wesson. Right? Okay. It's not going to happen here.
I think it's about as American as apple pie and Chevrolet.
That's right.
And Chevrolet's not too American anymore. In fact, it's Chinese owned.
And here's a fact. Here's an absolute fact. There's very little violence in America, except for in those cities, most of them run by Jews and liberals, where they prohibit the possession of firearms by law-abiding citizens. You go anywhere else in America, all the crime statistics are very, very low, because criminals know. For example, you go to Texas. In Texas, Harold, Texas, a little town, they tell their principal. The principal told the teachers, and they've been carrying sidearms for years. Okay? The teachers in the classrooms carry sidearms. Okay? There's no violence in Harold, Texas. That's not what happened in Connecticut. Is because the various liberals who run the colleges and the schools have declared these educational establishments to be gun-free zones. Well, that's an invitation to violence. I mean, and you don't even have to have a gun. In Japan, a guy with a knife attacked the school and started stabbing the school kids. Right? Well,
they could just go to the cafeteria and get something to eat and then start.
Grab a knife from the kitchen and start stabbing people, Yeah. It's not the guns. The guns are the problem.
A gun is a tool. It doesn't go off, by itself. And it's not because it exists that it's dangerous.
Right. So,
I know that I gotta ask you this though. We have a scenario then where they are going to try and take the guns.
Yes, they are.
Okay.
And they have to do it before the economy collapses.
And they have to do it before the economy collapses.
That's right.
So we're really talking about pretty soon, aren't we?
That's right. They can't give up, because they need to pay their shock troops, their stormtroopers, to go door to door, because Americans aren't going to turn their, let's assume that 50% of Americans turn in their guns. That still leaves 150 million guns out there, right?
It's 3 times the population of America still left,
Oh yeah, right. So, it's not going to happen. I know personally people who are going to shoot first before they give up their guns. Right.
Can I say something? I don't really think they're going to come knocking on the doors.
No.
Eli, tell me what you think this scenario sounds like, and I'm going to give you an option to door knocking.
Okay.
Let's say they pass this law, and they want to take the guns away, and they've sent out notices to everybody they know has a weapon because they're supposed to register, or they saw they bought them, and so forth.
Yeah.
Now, that doesn't mean, folks, we can't sell them at a garage sale.
Right.
And they're gone. But anyway, I can see a time coming where you go to get your driver's license renewed, or your tag on your car, or you go to pay your real estate taxes, or even go to get some care through Obamacare, and they say, oh, we see that you were on the turn-in gun list and you haven't done that. Right. I'm sorry. Until you do, we can't help you here at the hospital or at the doctor's office through Obamacare until you do that. And by the way, we won't renew your driver's license or your car tag. And by the way, we won't even let you pay your real estate tax until you turn in your gun. And if you don't pay and if you don't pay your taxes, we're going to take your house away.
Yeah, right. Well, yeah, it's
Would that be a scenario you could see happening?
Well, yeah, but all that's going to take time, and they're running out of time because the global economy is collapsing faster than they can do all that, right? And if they try to do all that, it's only going to work in big cities where they've already created a gun-free zone, right? And look at Detroit. It's the most actually, Detroit is an exception. The citizens of Detroit are allowed to own weapons, and in Detroit, but it's primarily blacks. All the whites have moved out. Detroit is, it's
funny you say that. Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that. Gordon Duff lives in northern Ohio, and he goes up to Detroit regularly, and he said I accidentally got in a neighborhood in Detroit where I realized that my pistol was underpowered.
Right.
Apparently they had some pretty heavy weapons there.
Oh yeah. No, they're sitting on their porches with automatic rifles. Yeah.
Well, we're talking about a state, folks, in our country that is in total economic collapse. And let me tell you what happened. Eli, the other day, the mayor of Detroit called a meeting to talk about the budget of the city of Detroit. Now, folks, Detroit City, what would you say, 1.5 million, 2 million? I know they've lost a lot of people, but it was a big city.
Yeah.
And the meeting was called to go over the budget, but the mayor didn't show up. Mm-hmm. Well, the congressman from that district was there, and he says, I've got a better answer. Mm-hmm. And so guess what they are drafting in the state of Michigan in Congress, their state Congress, right now. They're getting ready to dismantle the city of Detroit and get rid of it.
Yeah.
Now, what we're talking about here is the crumbling of America.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
Because of what? Not the bullet. Not because of the bullet.
Right.
But because of what?
Communism. Communism disguised as the welfare state.
Yep. And they used the economic bullet to take it down.
Right, yeah. The real threat to America is these Jewish politicians who are responsible for our exorbitant tax rates. Okay?
In the banking. Yes,
in the banking.
Economic.
Yeah. Right. So the American people are beginning to figure out who these Nephilim are. Of course, they don't know. Most of them don't know what the word Nephilim means, but they can see that these all these evil people have very much Jewish faces, right? And they're doing everything they possibly can to destroy America. And because the Second Amendment has been such a thorn in their side, preventing them from overturning the U.S. Constitution, they have decided, well, we don't have much time left. We've got to get rid of the Second Amendment. We have to eliminate the possibility that the people we want to oppress can defend themselves against us. Therefore, we're utilizing these false flag PSYOP operations, and we're killing children, shedding the blood of little children to create a a gut reaction against guns in this country. Okay? And so it's total brainwashing. It's total PSYOP.
So it sounds like a war by a ruthless
Absolutely.
criminal cabal to me. I mean, it
Absolutely.
sounds. I mean, call it what you want. I'm sure they've recruited some Joe Bidens of the world, which aren't Jewish, but are full-blown Zionists. He admits he's a Zionist, you know.
Yes.
And by the way, he has been put in charge of the gun grab in America.
All right. Okay.
So that makes sense. Okay. Now let me tell you this. Let me run this next thing by you before we run out of time here.
Okay.
Gordon mentioned that, along with the other guest, there is a military coup inside the government and the military trying to take down Obama, the vice president, the existing Secretary of Defense.
Right.
Now, a lot of people might hear, you know, that Obama gets assassinated and might be out in the streets celebrating. But that would be a little premature considering the fact that even a more ruthless regime is planning on taking over.
Yeah, you never know.
And so we have an active, and guess what? Mossad-led, Israel first
cabal inside the government.
Cabal inside the government working to have a coup of the United States as we speak.
Well,
and Gordon Duff says there is going to be before Inauguration Day an attempt to assassinate the president and the vice president.
Right.
What's your thought? What's your thoughts on that?
I predicted that possibility that if Obama doesn't play ball 100% with the Zionists, they'll get rid of him.
Okay. Well, maybe they thought that all along. Maybe that was their whole plan.
And that's possible. I think here's the alternative scenario. If they can't eliminate the Second Amendment, then by assassinating Obama, they will say they will have created the ultimate gut reaction against guns, right? And then they will declare martial law. See, martial law has always been an option, okay? But, that's not going to work either because the American people are beginning to smell a horrible rat, okay? And, again, it's going to be blamed, they're the ones most likely to assassinate Obama, but they're going to try to blame it on me, right?
Sure.
Me personally or somebody I know, right? But we've already alerted the American people to what's going on, what's likely to happen. And, so now they're kind of treading on eggs. And if they pull something like that, and what's going to happen if they assassinate Obama is that'll precipitate a race war. Okay.
Well, one of the things that I think tells us we're getting close is when after Mike Harris was on Press TV's interview, today is supposed to be Press TV's last day. Yeah. Now I'm going to give everybody a link in the chat room, but you can find this link on my website. There's the link to the news press release by Press TV that they're going off the air.
Okay.
And I think this is a possibility not only for Press TV, but for Argus Oak Radio and any other people that are not agreeing with the official report of any of this stuff anymore.
Right. Sure.
And here you and I are saying we don't go for it. We're not buying your 911 commission report, and we could go right down the list, and we're still not buying your Sandy Hook, Connecticut official report. So, what do you think about that? And what we're doing, isn't saying, oh, we're arrogant and stupid and we're just belligerent and have a complex against authority.
Yeah,
what we're saying is you're
right-wing kooks, right?
Yeah, what we're saying is we've got brains, and you're an arrogant a government worker, and you aren't the boss. We're the boss in America.
That's right.
And you aren't and you're not going to tell us what we can question and what we can't. We're not going to, just like Gordon Duff says, he says, if you think I'm not going to question you, he says, I've got something that will help you understand that.
Well, there's the First Amendment, right? Freedom of speech, right?
And he said, if you don't, you know what he said? He said, if you don't like the First Amendment, I've got the second that can take care of the first.
That's right. It's the Second Amendment that upholds the first, right?
Yeah, so the First Amendment, go over it real quickly, Eli. What's this First Amendment so folks will know?
Well, the First Amendment guarantees freedom of religion and freedom of speech, that the government cannot censor any individual.
There you go. So, and they're trying to. Yeah. Hey, Eli, one more question here. Have you heard of the book Under the Sign of the Scorpion?
Yes. Yuri Lina, right.
Yes.
Yes.
Tell us, do you know a little bit about that?
I read the book, and I quote it in my book, The Great Impersonation, How the Antichrist Has Deceived the Whole World. And he essentially documents the Jewish bankers and wealthy Jews who supported and financed the Bolshevik Revolution, the communist Jews, and how they raped Russia of its wealth in order to repay the Jewish investors, who financed the communist revolution.
Well, thank you for that. I hadn't read the book, but I knew that was the topic by looking at the index. And folks, if you're listening or if you're in the chat room, go to my website, the Waterman Files, go to my December 21st post entitled The Red Coats Are Coming. And down at the bottom is a free ebook, and the title of it is just what I mentioned, Under the Sign of the Scorpion. Click on the picture and download your free book.
Right.
And it's about the history that I haven't read it, and I just wondered if you had, and so it sounds like a decent book to read then.
Oh, it's fantastic. It explains how the Jewish community, worldwide capitalist Jewish community, financed the Bolshevik Jewish community to destroy Russia, to destroy Christian Russia. And by the way, that Jewish Bolshevik revolution slaughtered 60 million Christians in Russia. Wow. All we ever hear about is the 6 million Jews who supposedly were exterminated by the Nazis. We never hear anything about the 60 million Christians who were slaughtered by Jewish Bolsheviks.
It's gotten so absurd that people won't think. I know there's a fellow that took the list of camps that the Jews had mentioned they were getting exterminated in, and he measured them all up, and he put them elbow to elbow, people in them, and of course said, okay, how long does it take to do this? And they said 8 hours, and he went round the clock and put all these people inside these buildings.
Right.
And he figured up that it would take 75 years to kill 6 million, which means that they should still be going in those right now.
Yeah. Right. Well, I've read that calculation. Sometime it would have taken until the mid-70s for that many bodies to be cremated. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Well, so what we're talking about is if you're in Canada and you say there's 5,999,999 and you're just one off, it's so absurd in Canada right now that if you say, oh no, it wasn't 6 million, it was 5,999,999, you'll go to jail for 5 years.
Right.
Just for saying that it was one person
talk about
less.
Censorship. Yeah, talk about censorship.
So that First Amendment right that doesn't exist in Canada
or any other country really in the world. Only America.
And see, we're appalled to hear when Argosy gets slapped on the hand by their what they would call their nation's attorney general, by the way, who's now retired.
Right. Okay.
And they're still trying to, regulate the free press, which you and I would call the First Amendment.
That's right. That's right. And so there's no way the American government could throw anybody in jail here for expressing his opinion. But the Jews have accomplished that in every other country in the world, where they can literally put people in jail for denying the Holocaust.
Well, there is an event that happened in the Netherlands with a lady that probably more than likely was a satanic Luciferian agenda.
Mm-hmm.
And what they didn't get told was you can't talk about it. But in America, folks, we were just told if you do not talk about the official report about what happened in Connecticut, we're going to arrest you. Can you imagine what the Netherlands people, what would they do in the Netherlands if they said you can't talk about that lady in the Netherlands unless you go with the official report? And if you don't, we're going to arrest you.
Well, it just shows how the press is being controlled by the mass media, by the kosher insiders who are, manipulating the news. And how much time have we got, Doc?
We can take another break here in a minute and keep going.
Yeah,
I think.
Because there's another aspect of this that I want to bring to the public's attention. Okay.
Well, now here's something, folks, I want you to be aware of. I asked Eli to come on because he is historically an expert on these topics that we're talking about. I brought up the topic because the topic about the Mossad-Israeli connection and the Jews was not brought up by me or Eli. It was brought up by Mike Harris, Gordon Duff, who's a CIA agent that is now a whistleblower.
Right.
And the Veterans Today staff that writes this information and says, by and large, the Mossad is the biggest problem that America has right now.
Yeah, well, the Jewish lobby.
Yeah, the Jewish lobby. And so what we're talking about is historical information to try and give you, and then we try to examine, well, why would this group of people, and by the way, not all Jews are Khazarians.
No.
So we got to talk about that some other time. But let's take a break, Eli.
Yeah.
And let's go into your other aspect that you want to you might need to write it down or something.
Well, no, it's the drug aspect of the.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
All right,
People
we'll get into
know
that.
This because it's an imminent danger in their own community, and they need to know about it. Okay.
All right, we'll be right back, folks. We're going to take a break, and this is a heavy topic. This is a world criminal syndicate.
That's right.
All over the world. It's not just here.
It's a Zionist mafia.
Well, there are two places they're laying the golden egg. Really three.
Yeah.
The monarchical people in Netherlands and their wealth, the City of London and the bank there, and the Federal Reserve in America and their stupid banks, and all of them are run by.
Right. No, the Dutch Jewish bankers have been financing war for generations. Yeah.
So, okay. We'll be right back, folks. This is the Waterman Files, and this is the last day we're going to be on the air because the world is going to end. We'll be right back.
Dit is Aardige Zo Radio.
Welcome back to the Waterman Files. This is Dr. John Waterman, my guest today, Eli James, and we just went to break and we're talking, and we just see that just posted on Veterans Today is an article that I'll put in the chat room. I think I just did. Yeah, I did. Talking about there is now evidence of official foreknowledge of this event. It says here, in the following passage of my previous article on Sandy Hook, and this is in Veterans Today, he said he made the following reference to Ryan Lanza being the second named suspect in the woods. And here's what he said. Perhaps most astonishingly, this suspect arrested in the woods was named in an Associated Press report as 24-year-old Ryan Lanza.
Right.
The original report has long since vanished, of course, but you can see it referenced here.
Yes.
This was despite the fact that Ryan had already been named as the deceased suspect inside the store.
Right. And he's still alive. Right. He's still alive, and he was not there. Yes.
Yeah. And so it says here, I have since found the original Associated Press report in which in fact states that it was Ryan's younger brother, Adam, who was arrested in the woods. And so they've got a long article here about, this is just going too far.
Right.
I think this time it's going to be, they trained us in 911 to keep our eyes peeled for lies. Now, I think they've gone too far, and I think we're catching them red-handed.
They've overplayed their hand, as we talked about earlier. Serial killers, when they first engage in these type of operations, like 9/11, let's say 9/11 was the big one, and they've staged a lot of mini attacks since. Every subsequent staging gets sloppier and sloppier because they get more and more brave, and arrogant. Okay, and so I think this time they've done it. This is such a sloppy operation that everybody sees through it. Nobody's buying the official story at all. And one of the major aspects of this story is, which I wanted to get at, is the drug aspect. And it proves the fact that the mass media is totally complicit, because all of these mass murders, every single one of them, going back into the mid-'80s, if not sooner, where you've had mass killings, not just in America, but in places around the world, such as Port Arthur, Australia, in which case the killer was also an autistic, mentally impaired person on a prescription drug. Okay? And so the same thing with Adam Lanza, the same thing with Jared Lee Loughner, the same thing with James Holmes of the Aurora, Colorado. So we find it in every single case. Also, the Virginia Tech shooter was also on antidepressants. Okay? This aspect of these killings is never talked about by the mainstream media. Why? Well, initially, the biggest reason, the obvious reason, is because the pharmaceutical companies that produce these drugs are the biggest advertisers in the mainstream media. Right?
Well, sure.
You can't watch a television show, a commercial television show or radio show without hearing some sort of advertisement for drugs, legal drugs. Okay? So these pharmaceutical companies, by the way, the Bible refers to them as Mystery Babylon, that deceives the world by its sorceries, and that word sorceries is translated from the Greek pharmakia, right?
Oh, pharmacy, yeah.
Yeah, so it's telling us that the world is going to be deceived by pharmakia, big pharma, okay? Now, I just want to point out, and I'm going to make this as quick as possible, but this is very important for the listeners, because they have to realize that these drugs, these antidepressants, are evil, evil, evil drugs, that if you know anybody that's taking these antidepressants, get them off these antidepressants immediately because they have horrible psychotic reactions. Okay? And I'm just going to go down the list here of some of these incidents. In 2005, Jeff Wise, actually Cho Sung-Hu, the Virginia Tech killer, was on Prozac when he committed these murders. Jeff Wiesen, 2005 Red Lake Indian Reservation killer, he was on Prozac. In 1988, 31-year-old Lori Dan walked into a second-grade classroom in Winnetka, Illinois. She killed one child and wounded 6. She was on anafranil and lithium. In 1998, Kip Kinkle, a 15-year-old in Springfield, Oregon, murdered his parents, then proceeded to his high school, killing 2 students and wounding 22 others. He was on Prozac and Ritalin. 1989, Patrick Purdy, Stockton, California, 5 children killed and 30 wounded. He was on Thorazine and amitriptyline. 1988, James Wilson kills 2, wounds 7 at Greenwood, South Carolina Elementary School, Xanax and Valium. 1999, Sean Cooper, 15, of Notice, Idaho, took a shotgun to school, injuring 1 student, Ritalin. 2001, Corey Badsgard of Waluka, Washington, took a rifle to his high school and held 23 classmates hostage. He was on Paxil and Effexor. 1993, Steve Leaf of Chelsea, Michigan, killed the school superintendent, wounding 2 others. Prozac. 14-year-old Michael Carneal killed 3 at a high school prayer meeting in West Paducah, Kentucky. He was on Ritalin. 13-year-old Chris Fetters of Iowa killed her favorite aunt. She was on Prozac. And those of you who are familiar with Saturday Night Live, comedian Phil Hartman was killed by his wife Bryn. She was on Zoloft. Bryn then committed suicide. So we have incident after incident after incident of violence committed by these people on these antidepressants. Okay? And now to get to the more recent killings, these mass shootings. The Eric Harris of Columbine was on Prozac and Luvox. Dylan Klebold, also of the Columbine massacre, Paxil and Zoloft. Jared Lee Loeffner, the Arizona killer, he was on Prozac. Kip Kinkle was on Prozac. Joseph Westbecker was on Prozac. James Holmes, the Aurora, Colorado killer, was on Prozac. And finally, Adam Lanza of the Sandy, Connecticut, Newtown, Connecticut killings just recently. He was on Fanapt, Fanapt. So every single one of these famous cases involves these antidepressants. These antidepressants are directly implicated in creating psychotic reactions in these people. They become violent and they start killing everyone around them. And if you are on one of these drugs, or if you know somebody who is on one of these drugs, up to 2% at least of people have psychotic reactions. They get dark, somber, moody, and they turn violent. So if you know somebody who's on one of these drugs, and because Pharmakia has made it standard operating procedure to drug our school children in all public schools for so-called attention deficit disorder, which is nothing but being hyperactive because the kids aren't eating right, okay? Mm-hmm. That we have a drugged up society where death and mayhem are guaranteed by the drugs that these so-called doctors are giving our children and adults. Up to 23% of the women in America are taking these antidepressants.
That's horrible.
It's
absolutely
ridiculous.
Horrible.
Right.
Folks, I want to mention something that reminded me. If you are somebody that, or have somebody in your family that might be in that position, I would like for you to go to simplyyourhealth.com and contact us, and we have a brain quiz. There are 4 hormones that you can get that are in natural form. They're remedies you can get from your alternative health care provider. They're not drugs. Mm-hmm. But if you find out through this quiz what kind of brain type you are, you can begin to heal these problems that they came on the drugs for in the first place.
Yes.
So don't neglect that. And if you feel like you just like to take this little brain quiz just to find out what kind of brain type you are, let me know. Go to the Simply Your Health and contact me.
And this is not a problem just in America. It's global.
It is global. Yes.
Yeah. People who are on these antidepressants are going psychotic and they're killing people. If you know anybody who's on one of these drugs and their mood turns very bad, it turns angry, somber, and they start having hallucinogenic, episodes, immediately get these people off the antidepressants because they will start killing people, because that is the known literature on these antidepressants. But the drug companies are making $18 billion a year on these drugs, and they can afford the legal hassles when they're making
they can.
Kind of money.
And another thing that I might mention too, Eli, is this foments an event every time it happens with a gun to allow the gun grab lobby and those that are trying to bring us into total tyranny an opportunity to pass more laws that they actually
they're the ones doing it.
Causes us the problems in the first place because of the drugs. And I just really am not smart enough to figure this out, but I wouldn't be a bit surprised if there isn't some adjunct drugs or vaccinations that actually support or cause these SSRIs to be more I hate to say virulent, but much more
effective.
Effective. Mm-hmm. Kind of makes me wonder if there's kind of a part one and part two to this. And in the spy industry, we call that a reagent.
Right.
Where you give somebody the first dose of poison, a second person comes along with the second dose, but they're not poison in them of themselves. But when they're mixed together, they will kill you. And those reagents are used in the spy world all along, trying to get to heads of state at dinner parties and stuff like that.
Right. Well, you're talking about designer drugs mixed with designer GMOs, right? There's no doubt that these chemistry labs are capable of doing stuff like that, right? There really is no doubt.
Whoa! I tell you, we've got our hands full, and I'm glad you were able to join me today, Eli.
My pleasure. This message has been one of a stern warning to everybody listening. Do not trust pharmakia. Do not trust these terrorist governments who claim to be, how should I put it, helping you by killing children and blaming it on somebody else.
Your last comments are usually praise the Lord and what?
Praise Yahweh and pass the ammunition.
There you go.
Thank you.
Go get the free book, folks, on the Waterman Files. Go to Eli's website, killthebank.net. And, man, you will see the reason why they are so viciously protecting this little golden goose that lays a golden egg, I should say.
Right.
And hey, next week, Eli? If we're even able to get on the air, we might actually be broadcasting a revolution.
Yes.
We are, folks, we are this close we are very close in America.
And I just want to say
it's not something anybody that I know is wanting to see happen.
Right. Of course not.
But they think that it's only forcing their hand to happen.
Well, the founding fathers didn't want to fight the British. They had no choice because they were being tyrannized more and more greatly by the passing day.
Right.
I just want to make one more comment. The mass media has absolutely refused to report on the drug connection to all of these mass killings.
Yeah, they had
absolutely refused.
I heard that the drug industry had their damage control people there at the site that day it happened.
Yeah, and CNN stopped broadcasting medication commercials the day after it happened, right?
Well, that's interesting.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. So, folks, these media buffoons who, you'd think they'd have the brains to figure out, what drugs these killers are taking. I mean, the information is there for everybody to see, but you heard it first from me because I've been doing this research, and you're not going to hear it from Barbara Falters or any of those talking heads at CNN, NBC, CBS, or whatever network you're listening to, because the drug companies own them.
That's right. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Go to Press TV. Tell them you're going to miss them. It's been our pleasure to be with you, Eli.
Okay, thank you, Doc.
Have a good holiday, a good weekend, everybody. Have a good weekend, and enjoy yourself at your end of the world parties tonight, and say a few good jokes. Okay?
All right. Amen.
Amen.
Okay.
Goodbye.
Bye-bye.
There's a reason for my teaching, even though I can't explain. More than a dream that you are reaching, more than a laugh that shadows all the pain. A special meaning in the thorn of dreams, in the garden where a thought can blind me. 'Cause I am lost here, where it never gleams, where I found that I screamed so blindly, yeah. Until I rise up, fall down. Is this the reason that I can't feel the ground? Am I waiting for my tomorrow, or should I say goodbye? A purpose, 'cause I feel the same. And as I wait for my dreams to surface, as I wait I'm drowning in the rain. Just when I thought that it was over, I lost my grip and I hit the wall. A simple dream that I tripped over, now I have to wake up to my fall, until I rise up, fall down. Is this the reason that I can't feel the ground? Am I waiting for my tomorrow, or should I say goodbye?
Dit is Argezoog Radio.
Een andere kijk